The congressional chamber was alive with tension, a charged electricity that made every camera lens tremble. Reporters leaned forward, pens poised, hearts racing. Pam Bondi, confident and composed, leaned back in her chair, a smug smile flickering across her face. She believed she held the room in her grasp, that her reputation alone could silence any challenge. But across the aisle, Jasmine Crockett sat calm, unshaken, her gaze sharp, unwavering. There was a quiet fire in her eyes, the kind that only comes from experience, preparation, and an unshakable belief in truth. Whispers filled the room as the session began, murmurs of anticipation that something extraordinary was about to happen. Bondi opened her mouth, her voice sharp, rehearsed, ready to dismiss the pile of documents Crockett had submitted as irrelevant. The audience expected her usual display of power and dominance. They expected compliance, nods of agreement, the routine political theater. But they were about to be proven wrong. Crockett's hand hovered over the stack of documents, each sheet a potential spark ready to ignite the courtroom. She breathed slowly, measured, commanding attention without raising her voice. "The American people deserve transparency," she said, and even the faintest crack in Bondi's grin went unnoticed by most, but not by the cameras. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if sensing that history itself was about to pivot on this moment. Bondi laughed, a sharp, cutting sound meant to belittle. She glanced around, seeking validation, smug in the belief that no one could challenge her. But Crockett's reply was imminent, deliberate, a calculated storm that would dismantle Bondi's arrogance. Eyes widened, pens froze, and murmurs stilled as Crockett began to reveal what few expected. Documents that would not just challenge statements but shake assumptions, exposing truths that Bondi had hoped would remain hidden. Every frame, every camera angle, every whisper in that chamber built toward the inevitable. The clash was coming, and the nation watching through screens and social feeds sensed the magnitude before anyone even realized it. One woman poised, one woman overconfident, and the entire country holding its breath. And as Crockett lifted the first sheet, the air seemed to thicken. Every eye in the chamber locked on the moment, hearts pounding, waiting for the eruption that would leave everyone stunned. But what happened next would not just embarrass Bondi. It would leave the nation questioning power, authority, and the courage it takes to stand unshaken in the face of arrogance. The tension in the congressional chamber was no longer subtle. It had become almost tangible, like a storm pressing down on the marble floors and polished oak desks. Every reporter, every camera, every aide could sense that this was not a routine hearing. This was the moment when a seemingly ordinary stack of documents could become the epicenter of a national reckoning. Pam Bondi, still seated with that overconfident smirk, flicked her gaze at Crockett, underestimating the resolve behind those calm, piercing eyes. She believed experience, name recognition, and bravado were enough to control the narrative. She believed the room would bend to her expectations. But she had not accounted for the meticulous preparation, the unyielding courage, and the moral certainty of the woman opposite her. Jasmine Crockett's documents were more than paper. They were carefully curated revelations, each page a thread unraveling a story of concealed truths, bureaucratic negligence, and the subtle arrogance of power. She leaned forward slightly, letting the gravity of the moment settle over the chamber. "These documents," she began, her voice steady and deliberate, "tell a story the American people need to know. They deserve clarity. They deserve accountability." There was no hesitation, no tremor, only a quiet, commanding authority that drew attention like a magnet. Every eye shifted toward her, including those who had been skeptical moments before. Bondi, sensing the shift, adjusted her posture, an involuntary crack in the armor she had meticulously built over years. Whispers rose again, some observers tweeting live, some texting in disbelief. Did she just say that? This is about to get intense. The social media sphere already hummed with anticipation. Clips of the exchange, even before the revelations, were circulating, sparking debates, predictions, and heated discussions. Crockett's calm precision contrasted sharply with Bondi's rigid defensiveness, framing a visual story of hero versus arrogance that even casual viewers could understand. The stakes extended beyond the walls of Congress. This was a moment that could redefine narratives, challenge entrenched power structures, and shift public perception. A single misstep by either figure could become a national headline, replayed in soundbites, GIFs, and meme culture for months. For the audience, the FOMO was palpable. Missing this exchange would mean missing a historical confrontation unfolding live, a clash of integrity against ego, of preparation against overconfidence. Every second felt drawn out as Crockett began referencing specific pages, hinting at revelations that had already caused murmurs across the chamber. Bondi's smirk faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of irritation. For the first time, the public was witnessing a rare vulnerability from someone who had long cultivated the appearance of untouchable authority. The tension thickened, the audience leaning in closer, both in the chamber and through screens nationwide, as they sensed that the balance of control was tipping. And as Crockett lifted a document, prepared to reveal the first of many bombshells, the room collectively held its breath. Every camera focused, every journalist poised, every political commentator awaiting the eruption that could rewrite the story. One miscalculation, one revelation, and the power dynamics of this chamber, and perhaps the nation's perception of them, would never be the same. What would Bondi do when the truths laid bare could no longer be dismissed? The answer was coming, and the nation's gaze would not waver from the moment it unfolded. Pam Bondi had always carried herself with a confident air, a self-assurance so deeply ingrained it bordered on untouchable arrogance. Her rise was not an accident, but a masterclass in political performance art. From her early days, she learned the essential rules. Charm a media with a disarming smile, command attention in hearings with a sharp, theatrical pause, and meticulously craft public narratives that painted her as decisively capable and unflinching. Every courtroom, every committee session, and every press briefing was a stage for her well-rehearsed mastery, a domain where her poise and extensive experience could intimidate even the most prepared challengers. She operated with the belief that perception was a currency more valuable than truth, and she had spent a lifetime amassing a fortune. But the strategies that had cemented her power in the past were about to meet a perfect storm she had not anticipated, one she could not simply outmaneuver with a soundbite. Bondi's public persona was a polished, almost cinematic production. She had weathered numerous scandals and political attacks, often skillfully turning potential career-ending moments into public displays of dominance and control. Her speeches were measured to the syllable, her smiles precisely calibrated for the cameras, her criticisms cutting yet carefully crafted to appear professional, not personal. Behind the scenes, she was a relentless strategist, huddling with aides to dissect opponents' weaknesses, cross-examining expert advisors, and obsessively reviewing every document, every comma, that could ever be used against her. To Bondi, the world was a grand chessboard, and she prided herself on anticipating her opponents' moves long before they made them, often steering them into traps of her own design. Yet, as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett methodically prepared her documents, the first hairline cracks in Bondi's formidable armor began to appear. Re-examined through this new, unforgiving lens, moments from her past, subtle miscalculations, flashes of unchecked hubris, took on a sinister and significant new meaning in the public eye. Every decision she had made, every calculated pause designed to unnerve, every assertive dismissal of her critics, became a story not just of power, but of profound vulnerability. She had cultivated an aura of absolute authority, but in doing so, she had also created a persona that demanded constant deference, something Crockett's calm, factual precision was uniquely poised to dismantle. This arrogance was not born overnight. It was a hardened armor forged over years of affirmation, of consecutive victories in high-stakes arenas, of a reputation that fed equally on respect and fear. When she spoke, people listened. When she walked into a room, the very energy shifted to accommodate her presence. But these same victories had bred an ingrained sense of control, a dangerous assumption that she alone knew how every narrative would ultimately unfold. For the very first time, she was facing someone whose meticulous preparation, deep moral conviction, and quiet intensity made her trademark confidence feel fragile and precarious. Her career was a tapestry of moments reinforcing her own invincibility. Flawless press briefings, debates where opponents visibly faltered under her gaze, legislative victories that amplified her legend. Yet the very traits that had elevated her, her quick wit, her rhetorical flair, her commanding presence, also rendered her predictable. Astute observers could anticipate her patterns. The sharp, practiced retorts, the calculated smirks, the specific moments she would pivot to dominate the conversation. Crockett's methodical, quiet intensity, however, was an entirely foreign language, a strategy Bondi had no playbook to counter. Conversely, Jasmine Crockett's path was carved from resilience and an unshakable commitment to justice. Long before she ever stepped into the Congressional hearing room, she had navigated spaces where every single step forward demanded immense diligence and courage. While some were shielded by privilege and connections, Crockett's journey was defined by advocating for overlooked communities and challenging deep-rooted systemic inequities. These experiences were her essential preparation, each setback and confrontation honing her ability to remain composed under extreme pressure, to analyze complex situations with swift clarity, and to respond with precision rather than impulsive emotion. As a civil rights lawyer, she had fought battles where the odds were deliberately stacked against her, defending clients who had been systematically dismissed and silenced. This background trained her to listen with profound depth, to understand every possible nuance, and to anticipate every argument before it was ever uttered. These were the invisible skills that became her secret arsenal, quietly transforming obstacles into opportunities for truth. Her transition into politics was fueled by this same unwavering focus. She entered Congress carrying the weight of her constituents' trust and a profound responsibility of amplifying voices traditionally ignored in the halls of power. Her reputation was built not on spectacle or empty theatrics, but on substance, diligent preparation, and the courage to speak difficult truths to the most powerful figures, making them deeply uncomfortable. She understood that real, lasting influence sprang from integrity, from the unwavering alignment of words with verifiable evidence, and from standing firm even when the entire room seemed arrayed against her. Where Bondi wielded history, name recognition, and bluster, Crockett wielded clarity, documented evidence, and an undeniable moral authority. As the chamber filled with a palpable tension and the cameras focused in, the nation watched, sensing this was more than a mere political skirmish. It was a fundamental collision of preparation versus arrogance, integrity versus entitlement. Crockett's calm demeanor conveyed a deep, unassailable strength. Her journey, marked by struggle, sacrifice, and unyielding principle, had led her directly to this defining moment. And as she lifted her first document, ready to challenge a decades-old facade of dominance, the audience braced for a revelation that promised to not only expose hidden truths, but to redefine courage itself in the public eye. The chamber seemed to pulse with anticipation as Crockett and Bondi faced one another, each aware that every glance, every word, and every pause could shift the momentum. Bondi's initial confidence had not vanished entirely, but the subtle cracks were visible to those paying close attention. Her smirk lingered, yet her eyes darted occasionally toward Crockett's stack of documents, a silent acknowledgement that this was no ordinary challenge. The energy in the room was electric. Reporters leaned forward, cameras shifted, and even the aides standing along the walls held their breaths. Crockett began methodically, referencing key pages, her tone calm, yet commanding. Each point she made cut through the air with precision, dismantling assumptions, exposing inconsistencies, and forcing Bondi to react. The contrast was stark. One woman measured, composed, unflinching. The other, accustomed to command, now grappling with the unexpected weight of prepared truth. Murmurs spread among journalists and staff. Some whispered admiration for Crockett's clarity, others speculated how Bondi would respond. Social media buzzed with snippets of the unfolding drama, each clip framing Crockett as the embodiment of poise and Bondi as increasingly rattled. Bondi attempted to regain control, raising her voice, attempting sharp interruptions meant to intimidate and derail. Yet every interruption met a precise, unwavering counter from Crockett. The documents, once mere sheets of paper, became instruments of accountability, wielded with surgical accuracy. Each revelation tightened the narrative around Bondi, highlighting arrogance, overconfidence, and the vulnerabilities she had cultivated over years. The chamber itself seemed to shift with the rhythm of the exchange. Gasps from onlookers, scribbles from reporters, camera lenses zooming in on reactions that told stories words could not capture. The debate escalated with every point. Bondi's tone sharpened, her gestures became more animated, yet her words lacked the substance Crockett brought effortlessly. Observers noted the psychological shift, the balance of power tilting subtly toward the hero, whose composure in the storm amplified the weight of every argument. Crockett's pauses were deliberate, her measured glances signaling confidence, while Bondi's body language betrayed uncertainty. Each moment added tension, suspense, and a sense of impending climax, pulling viewers deeper into the story, urging them to see what would happen next. Beyond the chamber, the audience watching through screens and feeds felt the stakes intimately. This was not merely a political debate. It was a performance of integrity versus ego, preparation versus bravado, truth versus projection. Every click, every comment, every share amplified the moment, creating a digital echo chamber that mirrored the real-time intensity of the congressional floor. The emotional resonance was undeniable. Pride in Crockett's poise, frustration at Bondi's faltering control, and anticipation for the revelation that would change everything. As the exchange reached its zenith, Crockett hinted at the core of her exposure, referencing the documents in a way that left the room momentarily silent. Bondi's interruptions faltered. Her previous strategies no longer held sway. The tension was almost unbearable, a suspended heartbeat shared between the chamber and viewers alike. Every eye was fixed, every attention unbroken, as Crockett prepared to deliver the precise, calculated counterattack that would define this moment. The chamber waited, the nation watched, and the question hung heavy in the air. When the full weight of the evidence landed, who would emerge unshaken, and who would be left exposed? The answer was coming, and it promised to leave the audience stunned, hearts racing, and minds questioning the very nature of power, arrogance, and courage. The chamber held its breath. Every eye in the room was fixed on Jasmine Crockett as she lifted the first document, a calm intensity radiating from her presence. The air was thick, heavy with anticipation, as if time itself had slowed. Bondi, still attempting to project confidence, felt the weight of the audience's gaze pressing down, exposing her cracks. Every smirk, every sharp gesture, seemed smaller in the face of Crockett's unshakable composure. Crockett began, her voice steady, deliberate, each word measured and purposeful. These documents are not merely evidence. They're the truth the American people deserve. She paused, letting the gravity of her statement sink in. The camera zoomed in, capturing the subtle twitch in Bondi's jaw, the shift in posture that revealed unease. Reporters scribbled furiously, aides exchanged glances, and the audience leaned forward in unison, sensing that this was a moment history would remember. With each revelation, the tension intensified. Crockett unveiled inconsistencies that had been long overlooked, exposing omissions and contradictions with surgical precision. Bondi opened her mouth to counter, but Crockett anticipated, addressing every possible objection before it could even form. The documents became more than paper. They were instruments of accountability, each page amplifying the disparity between arrogance and integrity. The chamber seemed to vibrate with the energy of truth unfolding. The reactions were immediate and electric. Gasps echoed softly. A collective murmur spread, and the first signs of panic flickered across Bondi's face. The seasoned politician, who had built her career on controlling narratives, now found herself responding defensively to a narrative she could not dictate. Every hesitation, every faltered retort, only amplified Crockett's calm authority. The audience could feel the shift, the subtle but undeniable transfer of power in real time. Crockett's pauses were as powerful as her words. She let the room process each revelation before moving to the next, each moment meticulously timed to maximize impact. Journalists live-streamed, social media feeds erupted, and commentators dissected every reaction. The ripple effect was instantaneous. Admiration for Crockett, disbelief at Bondi, and an almost cinematic crescendo of tension that left viewers glued to screens. Then came the pivotal reveal. Crockett referenced the most damning page, a document that crystallized the narrative, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The room fell silent. Bondi's hands trembled slightly. The facade of control began to crumble. Crockett's calm gaze met Bondi's, a silent assertion of dominance rooted not in theatrics, but in preparation, courage, and truth. The moment was electric, the climax of a battle fought with evidence, intellect, and unwavering moral conviction. Every frame, every reaction, every whisper of anticipation contributed to the drama. Crockett did not celebrate. She did not gloat. She let the weight of the evidence speak for itself, allowing the contrast between her composed strength and Bondi's unraveling to resonate fully. The chamber, the nation, and the audience felt it, a singular, undeniable demonstration of courage confronting arrogance. And as the first wave of shock settled over the room, every viewer, every participant, knew the story was far from over. The documents were revealed, the truth laid bare, and the stage was set for the consequences, the ripples that would extend beyond the chamber, across social media, into the hearts and minds of the public. The nation watched, captivated, as the hero had spoken, and the villain, for the first time, faltered under the weight of undeniable truth. The chamber was silent for a heartbeat, then erupted, not in applause, but in stunned murmurs, camera clicks, and whispered disbelief. Every attendee felt the seismic shift. Pam Bondi, visibly rattled, struggled to regain composure, but the momentum had already shifted irreversibly. Crockett's calm authority had not just exposed documents. It had rewritten the power dynamic in the room. Every glance, every camera angle, every whispered remark captured a moment of reckoning that would echo far beyond the chamber walls. Outside the room, the reaction was immediate and electric. Clips of Crockett lifting the first document circulated across social media, trending within minutes. Viewers shared reactions, astonishment, admiration, and validation for the courage on display. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Crockett exposes. Hashtag truth over arrogance. Hashtag Pam Bondi flips out, fueling debates and discussions across digital platforms. Memes began circulating, depicting the dramatic contrast between Bondi's faltering composure and Crockett's unshakable calm, amplifying the story to a global audience. Commentators, political analysts, and journalists dissected every frame, every word, every subtle reaction. Talk shows replayed the exchange, highlighting Crockett's methodical brilliance and Bondi's unraveling confidence. Former colleagues and insiders speculated on the long-term ramifications, while ordinary citizens shared clips with commentary reflecting both outrage at Bondi's arrogance and pride in Crockett's courage. The ripple effect was instantaneous. The nation collectively processed a story of integrity confronting ego, evidence overpowering pretense, and preparation conquering assumed dominance. Crockett's message resonated beyond politics. Social media threads connected her courage to broader themes: fighting for justice, standing up against authority, and holding power accountable. Influencers, activists, and educators highlighted the exchange as a teaching moment, a demonstration that meticulous preparation, courage, and moral clarity could confront even the most formidable opponents. Every share, every comment, every post reinforced the emotional impact, creating a sense of community validation for those who identified with Crockett's heroism. Even in the chamber, the mood had shifted. Lawmakers, aides, and journalists alike recognized that what had just occurred was historic, a rare demonstration of truth prevailing in real time against a figure long accustomed to control. Bondi's smirk was gone, replaced by strained attempts at regaining authority, while Crockett's composure radiated a quiet but undeniable power. The tension that had gripped the room now lingered as an acknowledgement of courage and a silent recognition that the balance of influence had changed, at least for this moment. And as cameras captured the lingering reactions, the stunned, the awed, and the inspired, the nation outside the chamber felt the resonance of a story unfolding in real time. Every viewer understood that this confrontation was not just political theater. It was a testament to preparation, integrity, and the courage to stand unshaken. The aftershocks of that moment would ripple across social media, news cycles, and public discourse, leaving the world to anticipate the consequences, the debates, and the inevitable discussions that would follow. The question on everyone's mind: what comes next for those who dared to confront arrogance with unyielding truth? In the quiet that followed the storm, the lesson was clear. Courage and preparation can outshine arrogance and theatrics. Jasmine Crockett had not shouted. She had not gnashed teeth or thrown accusations. She had spoken truth, methodically, patiently, and unshakably. The chamber, the nation, and the audiences on screens everywhere had witnessed a demonstration of dignity confronting ego. This was more than a political victory. It was a reminder that integrity, perseverance, and moral clarity are forces that cannot be silenced. Bondi's faltering composure highlighted the fragile nature of power rooted in performance rather than principle. Crockett's calm confidence reminded viewers that real authority comes not from name recognition, past victories, or the ability to intimidate, but from knowledge, preparation, and an unyielding commitment to truth. For every immigrant, for every individual striving to overcome systemic obstacles, this moment offered validation that the path of diligence, courage, and perseverance could challenge even the most formidable adversaries. The nation's gaze had shifted, and with it, the narrative. Social media continued to buzz, not just with shock, but with admiration for those willing to stand firm. Commentators reflected on the lesson beyond politics, the triumph of methodical courage over unchecked arrogance, of evidence over ego, and of moral clarity over performative power. Crockett's victory was a symbolic reminder that the values of integrity, service, and diligence resonate far beyond the walls of Congress. As the cameras captured the lingering looks, the quiet nods, and the reflective silence, one truth emerged unmistakably. Courage and preparation can topple arrogance. Dignity can outlast bluster, and those who stand firm in principle inspire an entire nation. This was more than a confrontation. It was a call to action, a model of heroism, and a testament to the enduring power of truth. The chamber had settled, but the echoes of that confrontation reverberated far beyond its walls. Jasmine Crockett's poised courage had not only challenged Pam Bondi, but had reminded every viewer of a fundamental truth: preparation, integrity, and moral clarity always outlast arrogance. The audience, both in the room and across the nation, carried with them the weight of what had unfolded, a story of heroism and accountability that demanded reflection. This was more than politics. It was a call to action. Every individual watching was reminded that standing up for truth, even against overwhelming odds, is a responsibility and a privilege. Crockett's calm authority became a model for courage, inspiring viewers to act with confidence in their own lives, to challenge injustice, and to demand accountability wherever it exists. As the cameras faded and the social media buzz continued, the message was clear: heroism is not always loud, but it is always powerful. Now it's your turn to engage. Share this story, discuss it, and be part of the ripple effect of truth and integrity. Subscribe, join the conversation, and remember, courage, preparation, and principle are the forces that shape history. The nation watched. The lesson is clear. The question remains: how will you stand when truth calls?